Well, welcome everybody to another special John L. Scott podcast. And I've got the most special guest. So it seems like I only get special guests, but this guest is truly special. Kristine Milkovich with the Milkovich team. You are a rock star real estate professional with your sister and all your services. And
Thank you.
So much to learn from you. We're gonna have a whole nother podcast.
Let's do it.
Just talking about, care and business strategy and approach. The amazing truck I see everywhere with the Milkovich team, the logo,
It's little.
branding, marketing. It's amazing. If you don't know the Milkovich team, you got to look them up, check out some of their content and the truck. But ultimately, it's all about how much you care about your community, your clients, right? Isn't that where it all comes from?
It's true. It gets me out of bed on the tough days.
So Kristine, but before we go any further, what is something that has nothing to do with real estate?
I'm scared, Howard.
What is something that has nothing to do with the real estate about you that you can share with us?
Oh, wow. Okay. This could be a whole nother segment because I've done a few wacky, wild things in my life, but I'll pare it down to one for the sake of time. For some viewers, they're literally going to go, I've never heard of that show. But for those of you that look it up or have, in the early 90s, I danced on 2 episodes of American Bandstand. Yes, you heard it here first. I had the shoulder pads, I had the mall bangs, I had even more makeup on than I have right now for this podcast. I had all the things, and it was a blast, and it's one of my little secret. Did you know about?
Love it. I love it. I wish we had like a little dance spot right here. Oh my gosh,
Exactly.
yeah.
I mean, you could throw down some cardboard. I could maybe, Forever 21. I'm holding at Forever 21, so you're welcome. So.
Well, if you're watching this and you're a John L. Scott, family member, or if you're not, it doesn't matter because the topic is such an important one. This is an important conversation to have.
I think so.
And there's some history we've got to kind of cover first.
Yes.
And so, Kristine, I think, we've all heard, of course, of Pride Month. In terms of really doing a little bit of deeper diving to it, I know you've got some notes, but there's a history, and the history from like the late 1960s right into the 70s and only recognized, from Clinton officially. I mean, that wasn't that long ago. And here we are in 2024, and there's the whole real estate conversation to be had with that. So could you just give us a little bit of insight to Pride Month and the importance of it, a little of the history?
Pride Month was born out of and conceived originally in its truest conception from a historical incident that is called the Stonewall Riots. And the Stonewall Riots in 1969 in Greenwich Village, New York. A bunch of groups of people, maybe like you just did with your wife over the weekend, maybe I just did with my wife over the weekend, socializing, being in community, being in friendship, cracking open a beer, being in community. And they were at this group of people, much like probably where our viewers and listeners go eat, drink, have community, and be merry. They had been bullied and shamed for multiple years by the local law enforcement departments and the folks in charge, for lack of a better term. And so that wasn't new in 1969. But what was new at the Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village on this night in 1969 is they decided to fight back. And that in comes the original conception of why Pride Month, where was it created? It was through those days and weeks of the rioting that this movement really started.
It's like we forget history very quickly. And certain histories, like we don't really know very well, and we don't have enough curiosity, honestly, at times. And we've got it at our fingertips. But we were just talking about this today. Like when we have something like Pride Month, I mean, it's not just one month. We need to be good people all year round, right?
Right.
But it just...
Be inclusive and loving every day.
Oh, be inclusive every day. Yeah, that just makes for a good person. But when it comes to particular months or seasons, we can just be a little bit more reflective, a little bit more intentional. And so these are the times where we can like do a little research,
Mm-hmm.
watch maybe some content, go to some websites, and just find out some more. Like, let's try to wear some of the shoes that were being done at that time.
That's right.
Right? And so
Yeah.
that is such an important part. And
Yeah.
right when it comes to housing, for example, it's
Fair
really
housing.
important that we do get involved so that, we can advocate for those who have housing needs.
Yeah.
And so, let's put that aside. Give us
Yeah.
a little bit more in terms of then what progressed forward after that, because it wasn't like it happened right away where, that's just like, oh, okay, let's not let this happen. And
Yeah.
so instantly, I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't recognized until many years later.
Yeah, so that's a really great pivotal turn, Howard, is the actual first Pride Parade was actually about a year later in 1970 in terms of the gathering. Now, certainly in 1970, that Pride Parade was not what we see today coming up June 30th in downtown Seattle, or that we saw last weekend in White Center, or maybe in your areas and communities. But that is really the year, 1970, so about a year after. But then as you fast forward, I think the other thing about Pride, I get asked this, so if it's okay, if I have permission to slightly personalize it, sometimes folks in my life, in my adult life, have said, why do you need Pride? How I answer that is, why Pride, or why is there a Pride, is because there is this historical context of not having equity, inclusion, and when that has happened to many groups of people, those struggles and those fights of being bullied and shamed and marginalizing, be it in the workplace, be it in the fair housing sector, as you so eloquently brought up, Howard, that is really why there is a Pride Month. And here's the thing to that. Is it joyful and fun and cool when people dress up and have a really smashing good time? I think they do. A lot of them do. And by the way, most parades and marches, that is the intention. But it's also about protest. And you really set me up perfectly for that, because parades, in many of their conceptions, not just Pride, it's what is the background message? What is still today the struggle and fight? And so I think it's important to underscore, yep, there's a lot of fun going on and a lot of cool outfits and a lot of face makeup, but it's also a bigger conversation about what is it today that still needs some help and work.
You just shared a story, personal story.
Mm-hmm.
We need to hear more stories.
Oh,
It's the stories that actually resonate with us, that make an impact. And so, this is a really good month to, there's so many good stories.
so many things, so many books, many things online.
Yeah. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Give us an immediate, just in terms of not even just real estate, but in general, with Pride and, whether it's history or what's an existing resource that we need to start investigating right now?
Yes, so there are a lot, but I'll lead with one that is personally near and dear to me because it is actually real estate fair housing focused. And that is the LGBTQ plus Real Estate Alliance. It is a national organization. It was just conceived about 5 years ago. So although we are newer and small, we are mighty and growing in numbers. I have the great honor and distinction of being a part of the leadership team here in the Western Washington chapter. I am the board member that leads the membership development and the social. And so for individuals watching the show, Howard, if they want to get more data, more stats, more information, fair housing conversations all about the Senate laws that are literally on the docket right now while we're recording this, you can simply look it up, and it is realestatealliance.org. That is the website. And if you put some semblance of that into your search engine, you will certainly find it. But it's a wonderful organization.
And they can just reach out to you direct.
And they can. I mean, come on. I'm happy to help and have a conversation.
It's one thing to get involved, but there's also, especially if you're selling real estate, there's some awareness that we need to have when your clients identify, right, in one of the groups. And so if your client is LGBTQ plus, what are some things I need to be aware of? What should I be making sure I say or don't say? Is there anything like that to just help the everyday broker or agent?
Yeah, so Howard, that's a really loaded and amazing question. And here's the thing, again, so when we even think of the acronym LGBTQIA, for the listeners, do I have permission to just quickly roll it out? What does that acronym mean, right? It means lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersect, or asexual. And I'm not a spokesperson for that acronym. What I am is somebody that if I'm met with a client that identifies with one of the letters in that acronym, have I done my best job to seek to understand maybe some sensitivities, some blind spots, some reading or some prep, or going into some of these CRG's websites and learning how I can show up in my truest, hardest, clearest sense, but be sensitive to some of the experiences that maybe someone living on one of those letters in their everyday life that I personally, me sitting here, can't personally relate to because that's not how I identify. And so I think that that's such a sensitive, important question that you ask. So I think one, just the simple as what does that acronym mean? I think the other is things like the pride flag. And the pride flag itself is truly a symbol of tapestry, of coming together in alignment, in solidarity, and in a movement. So it could be as simple as just listening to this particular podcast and picking up a couple of I didn't know that. And you know what? I did just interview with a client that had a same-sex partner. Or I did pick up a phone call and somebody actually said to me, I want you to know, and maybe they share this to you, that I am a transgender person. Maybe they don't. But these are the conversations that help us just seek to understand and just come prepared to be an inclusive person.
There is oftentimes myths
Lots
and
of those.
assumptions that we all have when it comes to particular groups. Like I can also speak for like the Asian Real Estate, Association, and they've got their statistics. Oh, every Asian I've ever worked with, they've had plenty of money to buy.
Yeah.
We literally fall into some of these traps. Oh, all my friends who are gay, they are loaded. They have really nice homes. I mean, like literally, like there is like these certain stereotypes that we get into or that we hear. And we're like, actually, the statistics are not what you think that they are. Yeah. In fact, that's why we do need to be educated, because there is a history in this country, with a lot of discrimination and just getting loans and, like how their qualifications, there is a lot of that stuff happening. And it rolls over generationally. So give us a little of that insight.
Yeah, Howard, again, going back to the actual alliance, the website is so, I look at it weekly because there's so much data, as you just said. There's so much historical context, but I can give you some statistics. So right now, today in this country, the LGBTQ plus IA population, we have a 15% lower homeowner rate. Now, to Howard's point for all the viewers, does that mean the individuals that you know in your place of worship, at your gym, down the street, your childcare that identify as LGBTQ plus IA, you might be going, but they have great jobs and they own a great house. But the reality is statistically, 15% lower. And you just outframed some of the why. Could it be that broker, lender, appraiser working in their community didn't have the ethics that they should be having? Or was there discrimination, or was there marginalizing on their application or in the real estate interview? And so as much as there is so much to celebrate at Pride as it relates to accomplishment, we know today there is still a lot of uphill work to be done.
This is an incredible time in history. You got the 15% lower, and so it's even that much harder. We know for all of our clients, with the rates kind of being where they are, with the lack of inventory, all of these challenges, we all just want that safe place that we can call home.
Yes.
And so we are in this thing together, and this is an incredible time and month to just, again, be reflective, to celebrate, and maybe you've never celebrated or considered, or done any research, like, wait a minute, but like, okay, how do I get involved a little bit more like this way? And I think just there are so many inclusive opportunities in terms of these conversations, in terms of these community resource groups, right?
CRGs.
Yes,
I'm going
mean,
to trademark that.
I love that, right? And every company, typically the larger companies,
Yeah.
have the ERGs, right? But yeah, the CRG.
Community resource groups.
Let's create some community. What other final thoughts do you have for us?
Just a final thought to sort of put a bow on this is it's only as recent as 2016 that President Barack Obama announced and assured that Stonewall, the Stonewall Inn, and the surrounding geographical area right there is actually deemed a national monument. And the other thing that I would also say on this closing note is in 2017, same-sex marriage was granted on a federal level. I'll close with this. I was on an airplane with my wife. Her name is Kristine. We have been married since 2017 because that's the year that the federal government allowed access to this human equality right. We were on an airplane heading to see very, very dear friends in San Francisco for Pride Month. And we were on the plane and the judgment, the announcement from the federal government came down the pipeline, and we were on the tarmac, barely stopped, and the pilot got on the flight, the mic, and said, it's going to make me tear up just even saying it. I just got chills. This is a moment in history that everybody on this plane should be celebrating and looking at their human next to them and really saying, wow, what an achievement. And I have to say, for my wife on that flight, not only did we have a wonderful weekend in celebration and did we have a great Pride, but guess what we did? We planned a wedding and we got married like shortly after. So I just think historical context, and closing with my struggle, my personal struggle in being very vulnerable and transparent in front of your audience is I'm working on my equity inclusion lens every day. And I want to learn how is it that I can show up being more educated, more open, and more vulnerable to the conversation. So I thank you so, so much for this opportunity.
And it's also good for business. You know what? Being a good person.
Knowing more things, too, is good for business.
Knowing more things. I mean, like being more, sensitive and aware and celebrating together. That's kind of like what this is all about.
It kind of makes those clients that you're interviewing right now feel that much more comfortable with you.
So, what a month for us to enjoy taking some time to reflect and just celebrate, join in. I mean, this is what life is. Especially when things are harder, we gotta lean a little bit more into each other more than
Go
ever
into
before.
the joy. Go into the joy.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the only way we're gonna get through it.
Right. So let's celebrate. Let's join in. Be curious. Curiosity turns into care. Even into moments of these micro moments we've been talking about, into just incredible opportunities for you, for your business. Thank you so much for listening today, and we hope to see you again next time.